Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. This should be a lot of fun and maybe a little controversial. If you saw the title, you know we're going to talk about buying knives that are made in China. A little bit we'll talk about stuff in general that's made in China, because I do want to address the political and the philosophical question that is excited, sort of underlies this decision. But let me say first of all that I have bought knives made in China. If you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you've seen quite a few of them. I have bought other things that are made in China. I'm probably wearing something made in China right now, even if I don't know that I am, okay? And probably so are you. All right, so that's my introduction. I will say, in addition to owning knives that are made in China, there is a personal connection here. I lived in China for a while doing English as a second language stuff. My sister-in-law is Chinese, and I believe she's still a Chinese citizen. I can't remember if she's switched her citizenship to Canadian or not, but also I'm Canadian. So for a lot of you watching this, I'm in a different country, okay? I know a lot of my viewers are in the US. So that all should kind of serve as an introduction before we get into the initial point, which is the sort of the political or philosophical discussion behind all of this. And the main point here, I think, is to say this. Does being a patron of someone, you know, doing business with someone, does that indicate an endorsement of that individual or of that business? Okay, so let's say, you know, I'm a Christian. You can see the books behind me. You know I am. I'm actually a preacher. Okay, so if the store down the road is run by a Buddhist, and I go down there and buy a loaf of bread and a bag of milk or whatever else I buy, pet food, who knows, is my doing business with them indicating that I believe in Buddhism and that I support Buddhism? I don't think so. Okay. Furthermore, and if you're going to try to make that argument, it becomes a very difficult argument to maintain. Number one, because I just don't think people see that, right? I don't think people see me walk in there and go, oh, that Kevin, he's probably a closet Buddhist. You know, he's supporting Buddhism. No, I don't think so. Okay. Now, there are times, for example, the Chick-fil-A stuff a few years ago where Chick-fil-A came out as being opposed to gay marriage. All right. Now, I can't remember exactly how their position or how people came to know their position on that. But a bunch of people said, hey, we're not going to shop, we're not going to buy anything from Chick-fil-A anymore. All right, and they picked a day that they were going to boycott. And of course, more people purposely, because they knew about that, more people went there on that day than they'd had probably in the last 5 years. But I think they were making a mistake, number one. And number two, you know, in that very special case, okay, where certain gay rights advocates had picked a day to boycott Chick-fil-A, because they picked a day and because it was a media circus around it, did going there on that day make a statement? Yes, it did. Okay, so there are exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, me buying something from someone, and here's the thing, I'll bet you a lot of the people who went to Chick-fil-A and ate that day also bought something at Walmart while they were out. And Walmart has given literally millions upon millions of dollars to the gay rights movement. Okay, so, well, at this one point supporting Chick-fil-A, they've also gone to Walmart and sort of supported the opposite side of that spectrum. Further, if you think about stuff that's made in China and you try to avoid it, that's nearly impossible, because a lot of times even USA-made stuff has outsourced some of the parts. Okay, so let's say this knife, I know it's made in China, but let's say this knife said made in the USA. A lot of companies that say made in the USA have had, you know, the hardware or the blade or the scales or various parts of each made in China, shipped here, and then assembled in the USA, and they say made in the USA. All right. By the way, let's get some knives here. This is the Stedman DSG. It is made in China. It is a high quality, fairly high cost or moderately high cost Chinese knife. This is the Riyadh Knives, or built by Riyadh Knives. It's the Liang-Ma designed Remedy. Great, great knife, by the way. But again, Riyadh Knives is in China. This is a Riyadh as well. It is the Torrent. Great, great knife. again from China. Now this is obviously a higher end example. This one that I just showed you, the T1014, Thor, it is made in China as well by Real Steel. And I've got another Real Steel here for you. This is the H6 Special Edition. Again, a very good knife made in China. Okay, and we could add a whole lot to that list. You know, everything from the Spyderco Bird line, the Tenacious, Resilience, all of those, Ambitious, whatever else is there, all kinds of stuff. And in fact, some knives that we all love, like the Rat Model 1, is made in Taiwan. Okay, I know that's not the same as made in China. Again, here's a great Spyderco Gale Bradley 2 made in Taiwan as well. So number one, if you're just opposed to buying overseas, you know, I'm in Canada. So, you know, should I not buy anything from Benchmade or Spyderco or Kershaw or all of those US made knife people? I don't think so. All right. So all of that is meant to point out that I don't believe that just by buying something from someone, you are endorsing everything they believe and practice, okay? And I don't believe in communism. I don't believe in atheism, all right? In fact, I would actively oppose both of those, all right? And that said, I don't believe that buying a knife from China is endorsing or supporting communism or atheism or anything else that the Chinese government has done or said. All right. So that's point one, sort of a discussion of the politics and the philosophy involved in that. Now, I will say that I'm well aware, okay, that China takes a slightly different approach to world politics, and I disagree with their approach to world politics. That's more jingoistic than other countries. Okay, so that gets past all of the politics and the philosophy. Okay, and I hope you're with me on that. And by with me, I don't mean I hope you agree with me. You can disagree or agree whatever you want, but I hope you followed all that I said there. Love to hear your comments below. Now, what about manufacturing? Okay, and here's where we get some other stuff going on, because made in China used to kind of be synonymous with junky. Okay, it's not well done. And all of us have had all kinds of different things in our homes and in our businesses. We bought stuff, you know, you pull stuff out of a McDonald's Happy Meal or out of the bottom of a cereal box, and it's going to be some kind of made in China thing, right? And so we often talk about that means it's junky. Okay. Now, I will admit that there's a bunch of junk made in China. Okay. And if you're buying from websites and locations that don't have good reputations, if you're buying a bunch of stuff from AliExpress or whatever, you could be getting anything from anywhere. Okay. We really have no idea. I also know that in China they don't have the same copyright laws as the rest of the world, or they don't abide by those copyright laws, and that means you may not be getting what you think you're getting. And let me tell you a story about this, okay? I've got a friend who decided, hey, look what I'm going to take some money, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and I'm going to buy a bunch of Gonzo knives. They're really popular, they're really well made. I can sell them on eBay or Amazon or even just face to face. And, you know, because the price point is so low to buy them and have them shipped here, I can make a profit. Maybe I can buy them for $7 or $8 a piece, and I can sell them for $25 a piece, and hey, this will be great. Okay. Well, he starts calling around to different manufacturers in China that he's, confident are Chinese manufacturers. And you know what they all say? They say, tell us what Gonzo knives you want and we'll ship them to you. All right. What they mean by that is, dude, we may or may not be the real Gonzo. Okay. But because there's no copyright laws in China, we'll just make that knife and ship it to you. Now, the problem that creates is he wanted... All right, he wanted the actual Gonzo company because of their reputation, and it is a good reputation. Okay, so that does demonstrate that there are some challenges with manufacturing, with buying stuff manufactured in China. I've got a cousin who is a hydraulic engineer. He designed a fishing lure, and he asked a Chinese company to manufacture that lure for him. He's also production manager at his company. So he was in China kind of working with a Chinese branch of their company there, and said to one of the guys, hey, how much would it cost to have this manufactured? The guy said, yeah, I think it'll be like 8 cents a piece or something like that. And so he made a bunch of fishing lures, okay? Finally, I have another acquaintance who runs a factory and looked into Chinese manufacturing, okay? And he found that here's how the sort of breakdown was at the time. This was 5 or 6 years ago, but at that time, a $1 million budget in Canada. Now this was a Canadian, so his payroll was $1 million a year. He said that payroll could have been reduced to $50,000 a year by moving manufacturing to China. Okay. Now, that may not be the same for every different thing that you can manufacture. It may not be the same as knives versus, frying pans versus car tires, okay? Who knows? But I know Chinese manufacturing can be a bit of a crapshoot. Now, I will say they've gotten better, and I've got a couple of guns, 2 Norinco guns that are Chinese guns. They function amazingly. Very, very reliable as anything I've ever seen made in the U.S., more reliable than a lot of stuff I've seen made in North America, okay? So, now let's take the next step. If you want to buy something made in China, I've demonstrated that I don't think it's wrong. I've demonstrated that if you need to do your due diligence because you may or may not know what you're getting. Now, finally, if you've established all of that and you're looking at a new brand, let's say you're looking at a Steedman, let's say you're looking at a Real Steel, do your due diligence, okay? Ask around, ask the manufacturer, ask the retailer, hey, what's the story with these guys? Have you had a lot of returns? Most retailers, especially if you've developed a reputation or developed a relationship with them, are going to tell you what the story is, okay? And by the way, that's a good habit to get into anyway. If you're into knives, I've often said to retailers, hey, can you open the box and make sure you're not sending me one that has this or that problem? Make sure that whatever, make sure that the grind here terminates as it should or something like that. I've done all that stuff. Okay, so do your due diligence, but then you're probably pretty good. And in fact, you may be able to find some really cool stuff and some really good opportunities, all right? So let's start off with a very budget-friendly one. This is the Real Steel H6. This is a really, really well-done knife. It's got good steel, good quality materials, heavy-duty construction, and these guys go for around $40, $45, okay? And for that $45, this costs about as much as a Spyderco Tenacious, and it is not even in the same ballpark as a Tenacious, okay? By the way, a Tenacious is made in China too, so guess what? You're getting a really, really good knife. Same is true for the T101 Thor. Now, the construction on the T101 is more similar, I'd say, to a Tenacious, but the quality on these, the level of fit and finish, the level of craftsmanship, attention to detail, it's all there, okay? And I think part of that makes sense, right? Because if you got to pay someone on quality control to kind of check out every knife, is it easier to pay somebody, whatever, $3 an hour than it is to pay them $15 an hour? Yeah. And by the way, $15 an hour might be more like a US manufacturing price. In Canada, most of our manufacturing jobs start at close to $20 an hour. All right, so labor is very expensive. And so saving some money on labor is a viable option for a lot of companies. By the way, some of the companies I have here are totally Chinese anyway. All right, it's not, in fact, I think all of these are. I don't have, yeah. So all the companies I'm showing you are Chinese companies. All right, they're just telling you, yes, this is made in China. It is Chinese. It's different, and maybe we take more of an issue with it, although I don't really, but you may look at it differently if, say, when Spyderco or Kershaw or Benchmade with their H&K line, when those companies do it, they're saying, hey, we're an American company. But we are going to sell you something that we've had manufactured in China. All right, so keep that. That's a different sort of discussion here. And again, I have no problem with it as long as they're honest, but maybe you would feel differently. So we've talked about manufacturing, we've talked about possible problems. Now we're talking about quality and cost, okay? So often the quality for cost from Chinese stuff is very, very good. Now that's changing, and I would say in the next 5 years, the gravy train will be gone, okay? You won't be able to buy a knife like this for $140, it'll be $200, all right? It'll be similar in price to the American stuff. You won't be able to buy a knife like this for $350, it'll be $450 or $500. Okay, you won't be able to buy a knife like this for $375. It'll be $600. Okay, and so right now things are really, really good. All right, and we're kind of seeing some benefits that we receive by having these Chinese manufacturers. All right, and again, that won't be forever. And already worldwide, people are looking elsewhere. Okay, there are places in the world where you can get even cheaper labor than China, and so that's starting to change. By the way, China is adopting various aspects of capitalism. They were already doing that back in 2002 when I was in China. All right, so let's put it this way. If you do your due diligence, and if it's a reputable company and you know other people who've bought from them and they do a good job, the quality coming out of China is phenomenal. And oftentimes it can be better than its American equivalent because of the fact that you've got a cheaper workforce. You can afford to pay extra time and attention on detail, materials, machining, things that we would normally see upcharges for. They can do those things for free or for less because the labor costs are so low. All right. One more thing I want to talk about. I know about the copyright stuff. Again, that's one thing I don't like. All right. So maybe you're different. That's fine. But someone who just, makes a jacket and says, yep, this is a Tommy Hilfiger jacket, and it's not really Tommy Hilfiger, that's wrong. That's lying. Okay. If you make the jacket and you say, hey, this looks a lot like a Tommy Hilfiger jacket, but it's made in China, I don't have as much of a problem with that. I may not buy it because, it's sort of because of the stigma associated with it more than anything. But at least people know what they're getting. Now, that said, I have bought and reviewed Gonzo knives on this channel, and I don't have a problem with what Gonzo does, again, because they're not lying, okay? In fact, it's similar to H&K. Would I buy an H&K knife? Sure, I would. Yes, they're owned by Benchmade. I know they're made in China. I have no problem with them. Okay. So that's my take on stuff that's made in China. If you're a little bit careful, you can find some really good stuff like this or like this that are amazing blades, very high quality. That will serve you extremely well, that are more well made with better materials than what you can get for the same price, something that's made in the US. By the way, that's a generalization, and you guys need to remember all generalizations they're generalizations for a reason. There are going to be some exceptions, okay? So my point is, if you see a knife and you really like it, maybe it's made in Taiwan, okay? Maybe it's made in China, all right? Maybe it's made in the USA, maybe it's made in Canada, maybe it's made in Germany, Boker, right? If it's a good knife and it's well made, my recommendation is this: base your judgment on the quality of the thing you're talking about rather than on the philosophy or the politics behind that thing. Unless you specifically know that this company, let's say, Real Steel says, for every Real Steel knife you buy, we're going to kill a baby. Well, okay, don't buy it then, right? But I mean, that's not what most of these companies are doing. Most of these companies are just regular workers like you and I who want to make a living and go feed their families. They just happen to have families that are in a different part of the world. All right. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. And I know I've asked you that a couple times, but I think this is the kind of subject that engenders a little more discussion. So there you go. We'll talk to you soon.